Yep, still there. As you could tell from the title of today's episode, assuming it hasn't been changed in production, entirely possible, I often change the titles. We have ourselves another topic that did so well, we're going to cover it again. Well, probably not this one, because if the previous title did well, then I'll do it again, won't I? Because that's how capitalism works. Fortuitously, as one famous person or another has said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and history is replete with examples of actions coming back to bite the initiator squarely on the arse. Interesting, or not, depending on your view of things, the famous person to whom that phrase is accredited, St. Bernard of Clairvaux, almost certainly did not come up with it. Gotta say, Dave, not particularly interesting, no. The reason for this is that the first written record of him using it was published some 500 years after his death. Fascinating. I mean, quotes are misattributed all the time. I'm being particularly mean just because I'm being a bit spicy, but quotes are misattributed all the time. Like, you hear some clever quote, just be like, yeah, fuck it, Mark Twain. Sure, Mark Twain, why not? Given that humans can barely walk home from the pub without embellishing the conversations they had, it seems unlikely that the phrase would have passed along untainted for half a millennium. Anyway, enough rambling, let's get to it. Yeah, you're goddamn right. This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a professional, beautiful website with ease. Look, if you want a site that looks custom-made without actually needing a designer, Squarespace's design intelligence does all the heavy lifting for you. Their AI-powered tools help you create a stunning, personalized website in minutes. You're selling something? Squarespace Payments makes transactions seamless with support for Apple Pay, Klarna, and more, all managed in one place. And if you need to schedule clients, Acuity Scheduling lets people book appointments directly on your site. No back and forth emails, all right? So go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're all ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/blaze to save 10% off your first website or domain with the code BLAZE. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring. And now back to today's episode. The 18th Amendment. During colonial times, America was an amazing place to live if you like to drink. I should move to America. Wait, in colonial times. Cool. I mean, that's a bit more tricky because of, time. Time being linear. Assuming you weren't black or somebody who was an actual native rather than an invader. Oh no, but I would be an invader. Yay! The first invaders, colonists, brought with them much beer and wine, and largely because it was usually safer to drink than water, alcoholic beverages were enjoyed from sunup to sundown, the good old days. Unfortunately, if various religious figures are to be believed, the entire country being smashed all the time both increased crime and decreased productivity. And as we all know, that is a goddamn lie. Obviously, the best way to solve the myriad of problems caused by the devil's piss was to ban it entirely. I'll just quench my thirst here with a little bit of my gamer subs. According to evangelical preacher Billy Sunday, whiskey and beer are alright in their place, but their place is in hell. So, it was that, after much lobbying, the 18th Amendment, which banned the sale, manufacture, distribution, and transportation of alcohol across the country, came into force in 1920, the dark days. Interestingly, several individual states had a crack at prohibition in the past. The state of Maine passed prohibition laws in 1846, and several others would follow. Unfortunately for the anti-alcohol brigade, America became somewhat distracted by a not insignificant event in 1861, and the idea of temperance was put to one side for about 40 years. It's Civil War. It's really bad, but I'm not sure what that is. It's got to be the Civil War, right? So, did the wholesale ban on alcohol lead to the idyllic utopia promised by the likes of Billy Sunday? What was it? 1861. Yay! It was the American Civil War. As it transpired, Americans quite liked getting drunk, and almost as soon as the ban came into force, people started making their own alcohol both for private use and for sale and consumption in secret speakeasies. While this was, of course, illegal, the real problem started when these unscrupulous individuals began to get a bit more organized. Bootlegging quickly became a highly profitable enterprise and not only made several people very rich, the most notable, of course, being Al Capone, but it also led to a fair amount of gang violence between various suppliers. The claims that all prisons and jails could be repurposed to better serve the public good began to look rather shaky indeed. Aside from all the unforeseen violence, America quickly began to realize that alcohol sales had previously brought in a lot of tax revenue that had previously paid for schools, roads, and other minor conveniences. It was perhaps fortunate that America doesn't provide free healthcare. The thousands of people admitted to hospital every year as a result of drinking tainted moonshine would have stretched the public purse even further. Yeah, for a moment there I was like, wait, surely stopping drinking alcohol, is these going to make people healthier? And then it's like, no. because they're still going to be drinking. They're just going to be drinking shit that might make them blind. By 1932, when the country was in the grip of the Great Depression, having a couple of beers to take your mind off the state of the economy became too attractive to ignore, and Franklin D. Roosevelt ran for and obtained the presidency on the promise that he would end the ridiculousness. FDR, man, that is a good-ass campaign promise. He's like, guys, if you vote for me, fuck that 18 amendments. We're amending it again. Fuck that. We want to drink. And FDR, his family was super rich. It wasn't like he was out of booze. Fortunately for the United States, FDR was a rare breed indeed, one of the few politicians who actually honored one of his pre-election promises, and in 1933, the 21st Amendment came into force, repealing the 18th. Some states refused to return to normality, though, and it wouldn't be until 1966, when Mississippi finally put alcohol back on the table, that the land of the free once again became an entirely wet country. Now, before we move on to the next entry, I'd just like to say that I hold a personal grudge against Al Capone. You're older than I thought, Dave. Not because he was directly or indirectly responsible for the death of a family member, but because he did not leave a single item of interest in his vault, so I waste about an hour of my life watching that stupid TV show. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, any safe thing where they crack it is always a disappointment, right? The Hawaiian mongoose. If I cast my mind back into the vague, fuzzy memories of my childhood, I can partially recall a piece of a story that I once heard. The story involves an unfortunate young lady who, for whatever reason, swallowed a spider. In order to counteract the exceptional damage that this would undoubtedly cause, she then elected to swallow a sparrow to hunt down the spider. Oh my god, I remember this story. There was an old lady who swallowed a fly. To swallow the fly, to catch the fly, she swallowed a spider. To swallow the spider, to catch the spider, she swallowed a bird. Sparrow. So weird. However, after careful contemplation, she decides that having a live sparrow in her digestive tract is also not an ideal scenario, so she swallows a cat to take care of the bird. I don't remember what her eventual fate was. Perhaps she choked on a lion that she sent in after the dog. The only reason I'm telling you this story was that I was reminded of it whilst researching for this next entry. You bulking the word count today, Dave. Anyway, let's move on. As far as I'm aware, there is only one thing on this planet that I have an irrational fear of, and that is rats. Wow, that story was completely unrelated. What is that about, Dave? Why? Unfortunately, I made the mistake of reading The Rats by James Herbert when I was about 10 years old, and the giant mutant rats in this story still occasionally haunt my dreams. At least, I know I'm not the only person to hate rats. Sugar farmers in Hawaii hate them too. In the 1870s, these farmers were constantly inconvenienced by these vermin. Apparently, although rats will eat pretty much anything, including your ears, they are particularly fond of sugarcane, and entire harvests were destroyed. In 1972, one farmer came across an article which mentioned that in certain parts of the Caribbean, fellow sugar farmers had imported mongooses from India, and these mongooses had greatly reduced the rat population. This never ends well. Oh, I see the spider with the thing in the story. Oh, because they bring in the mongooses, and then the mongooses eat the rats, but then the mongooses also go crazy and destroy all the crops, so they bring in like some tigers, they get them, and it spirals on. Rather than carrying out careful research on this matter, or even stopping to double check his source, he convinced many other farmers that this would be the way forward, and many of these predators were released into the fields of Hawaii. While it is true that a mongoose could probably defeat a rat in combat, there is a rather glaring problem with the whole project. Mongooses are diurnal and rats nocturnal. Wait, is diurnal what it's said when it's like just being awake in the day like a normal person? So the two species never actually came into contact with one another, but it gets worse. Not only did the mongooses not kill the rats, but they set about systematically ridding the island of many of its native bird species. As the population exploded, they also developed quite the taste for turtle eggs, and this caused a massive decline in these animals as well. Oh no. This is what happens when you introduce like a new species to like your ecosystem and it's not used to it. It's gonna fuck it up. It always does. By the time the mistake had been realized, it was too late, and the Hawaiian mongoose is still prevalent on Hawaii to this day. They couldn't get rid of it. Caution, pickpockets at work. If you travel to any big city, then the chances are you will probably have seen these words or a variation thereof on signs all over the place. Yeah, these pickpocket signs are all over the metro here. Now, the logic of including these signs in high crime areas is sound, but only up to a point. Imagine you are, say, climbing the broken down escalator at one of London's major tube stations. When you reach the lobby, you see one of those signs and immediately check your pockets to reassure yourself that you're still in possession of your wallet, mobile phone, keys, etc. Oh, I see what's going to happen. The pickpockets will just wait at the top of the escalator, wait for people to see the sign, and then just do the old, yep, still there, yep. And then the pickpocket knows exactly where you're keeping your shit, and they just go take it. Oh my God, this is what happens, right? Having reassured yourself that you go about your day, safe in the knowledge that you're far too wily to have had your pockets picked. Unfortunately, when you later attempt to pay your £45 cafe bill for that one piece of avocado toast and pretentious coffee, you discover that your pockets are now completely empty. What is it with pretentious coffee? I've probably complained about this before, but why does coffee taste weird the more expensive it gets? Like, some things get more expensive and they just objectively taste better. I mean, wine to a point, steak to... not to a point, I think steak just gets better as it gets more expensive. But coffee, at some point it just starts tasting weird. But how could this be? You saw the sign, you checked your pockets, all was well. Sadly, by their very nature, pickpockets are a sneaky bunch of bastards and have learned to use such warning signs to their advantage. As soon as you checked your pockets, you provided the nearby thief with the exact location of all your valuables. This means that rather than having to guess where you keep, say, your phone, they could just smoothly slide it out of your back pocket while walking past. Depending on which set of statistics you like to believe, signs like this actually increase pickpocket success rather than decreasing it. Personally, when traveling through London, I keep all of my valuables in inside pockets. Who doesn't keep valuables in their inside pockets? I don't know, people who keep a phone in their back pocket, it's just weird. That's like, you're gonna sit on it, it's gonna get stolen, it's gonna slip out. It's like, it's just not comfortable. A good friend of mine, who I've briefly mentioned in a previous script, takes a different approach when in high-crime areas. Susan, not her real name, is quite a snake enthusiast. It's not uncommon for her to travel with at least one of these snakes under her coat or curled up in one of her pockets. No f***ing shot, that is super weird. I don't like snakes, they're scary. On at least one occasion, she has been alerted to the fact that someone was trying to relieve her of her valuables by the scream of her pickpocket. To be fair, I imagine it would be quite dramatic to put your hand in someone's pocket expecting a phone or a wallet and instead coming into contact with a live snake. Such an encounter may cause one to change their vocation, or at the very least their underpants. The cobra effect. In around 1875, British-controlled India had a bit of a problem. There were so many poisonous cobras in the big cities that they had started to endanger the human population. Fortuitously, the British leaders were a clever bunch and immediately came up with an excellent solution. Any citizen who delivered a dead cobra would be paid a sizable bounty. As you might imagine, the public turned against the snakes with the sort of single-minded hatred that can only be fueled by cold, hard cash.
Oh my God, we're gonna make so much money. God, yeah.
What's going to go wrong here? Are people going to be like breeding snakes to just turn them in as dead? Initially, the program was strikingly successful, and it wasn't long before people could once again venture outside with a reasonable degree of certainty that they wouldn't be attacked by a cobra. Holy shit, was the problem really that bad? That's kind of mental. After a while, though, something strange began to happen. Although the streets remained almost snake-free, the number of bounties being collected rose sharply. Curious as to exactly why this might be, people are breeding the cobras just to kill them. The government carried out some quick investigations and discovered that the system was being exploited. You see, if you have a few cobras, or indeed a few of any animal, as long as you have both male and female specimens, it is fairly easy to make a lot more of them. Armed with this knowledge, unless they're pandas just won't fuck. Armed with this knowledge, enterprising members of the public had started to breed cobras, kill them, and then deliver them to the authorities in order to collect the bounty. The trick would be, you just got to do it for a short period. Be like, yo, next 2 weeks, anyone who brings in a cobra gets paid. After that, no payment for cobras. Because that's not going to be it. People aren't going to be able to breed them fast enough. And then you repeat it in just randomly. So people don't have to have collections of cobras. Because if they can predict every year for 2 weeks they do it, then people will just start breeding the cobras ahead of time. But if you just randomly do it, then people won't, because they won't want to have to hold on to cobras for maybe they won't do it for 3 years. Once the authorities realized what was going on, the program was brought to an abrupt end. As you may be able to imagine, this resulted in another problem. All across India, cobra breeders were now in possession of hundreds of worthless snakes, and possibly to save themselves some time, but just as likely to piss off the government, they released all of their snakes back into the wild, resulting in a far greater cobra problem than had been before the bounty program was introduced. The streisand effect. While I am absolutely certain that Simon has covered this topic before, not as many times as the Pepsi Jet or the woman who got a scalded vagina from a McDonald's coffee, but probably more than once, absolutely, I can tell you the specific details of it. Barbara Streisand had a large property on the, I want to say Malibu coastline, And some like body came by to like photograph the coastline for like coastal erosion or whatever. And Barbara Streisand did like an injunction or whatever so that they couldn't publish the photo of her house in the database. And the problem was that this drew way loads of attention to this property. And even now, in my mind, I have an image of what this property looks like. And that's it. I don't even know what Barbara Streisand looks like, but I know what a house on the Malibu coast looks like because of the Streisand effect. So what happened here? In 2002, a photographer named Kenneth Adelman embarked on an ambitious project to record the entire Californian coastline through a series of aerial photographs in order to document coastal erosion over time. Ding! First point to me. Although his work obviously included the homes of thousands of people, the photos were taken from such a distance that no useful detail could be discerned. Adelman's work, while obviously interesting to him, did not appear to captured the imagination of the public, as his image catalogue was only downloaded 4 times. Fortunately for him, his luck was about to change thanks to a whiny entitled celebrity. Apparently, one of the houses featured in his piece belonged to mediocre singer and South Park special guest Barbara Streisand. Streisand was so annoyed about this that a team of lawyers wrote an angry letter to Adelman's non-profit organization demanding that he take the photos down. I don't think that's how it works. What law has he broken? When she refused, she attempted to sue him for $50 million. This is where the unintended consequences came in. As you may remember, until the complaints from the agent has been, allegedly, the images had only been viewed 4 times. This number quickly rose to 6 when her lawyers downloaded a couple of copies, and then, as soon as the story was latched onto by various news outlets, demand for the image rose sharply. How sharply? Well, according to Adelman, it was downloaded approximately 500,000 times. But what about the lawsuit? Was Adelman sued into oblivion by the crotchety old biddy, allegedly? Well, no. Not only did she fail to extract any money from him at all, but she was also forced to open her checkbook and pay all of his legal fees. Had she just let it go, it is extremely doubtful that anybody would have ever heard of the project. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of the episode. Before I go, I'd like to revisit something that I mentioned in the last episode of the same name. I won't remember this. If you remember, I told all of you that approximately 300,000 disposable nappies are thrown away globally every minute. And Simon not only disbelieved me, but attempted to prove me wrong with ChatGPT, only to have his attempt thwarted by connection issues. Consummate professional that I am, I went back and not only double-checked the numbers, but also successfully asked ChatGPT the question, "Hey ChatGPT, my boss questioned my mathematical abilities and claimed that it couldn't possibly be true that 300,000 disposable nappies are thrown away every minute globally. Am I correct in this, or was I wrong? One word answer, please." ChatGPT, yes. That is a goddamn lie.